Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever you tune in today. This is Concerned Citizen of South Sudan going live. It is Sunday, August 21st, 2022. Tonight, with the new live broadcast episode, my guest will be Dr. Peter Berajak. We'll be talking more today the impact of chronic inflation on South Sudanese citizens. As you know, Peter Berajak has been working courageously to bring about change in South Sudan, like other South Sudanese who are really calling for drastic change in the country, because our country has been plunged to the war for a very long time. So tonight, please, I want you to join me in this live episode as we discuss these very, very, very important issues. Today, as I said, we are having a guest here. Dr. Peter Berajak will join us here momentarily in the studio. Please go ahead and share our live broadcast here on the Facebook. And I want you to share us as well on the Clubhouse. We'll be live simultaneously on Facebook and the Clubhouse as well. And please don't forget to go ahead on the YouTube and subscribe to our channel there, John Core Mayol, because I know some people who don't have Facebook account, they're likely to watch on the Facebook. So I invite you to do so. With now, I will go ahead and bring my guests. Dr. Peter Berajak here, join me here momentarily so we can start the discussion. So Dr. Peter Berajak, welcome to Concerned Citizen of South Sudan. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And as always, thank you. As you see on the screen here, this is very important issues that we are discussing today, the impact of chronic inflation on South Sudanese people. Please, Dr. Peter Berajak, I want you to greet our viewers before we move our discussion. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Comrade Jonkur, for inviting me to have this conversation with our citizens who are all around the world, those here in the United States, those back home in South Sudan, and those wherever they are. It's a great honor and a privilege to be here. This conversation is a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to having it with you and with everyone this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Biar. And with that, we will start our discussion. Peter Biar, I wanted you to help our viewers, the average South Sudanese, who do not know very well, what is the inflation actually, and what are the factors, what is the inflation, and what are the impact of inflation on the army and also other organized forces in the country?
Well, thank you, Jonkur. Obviously, let us start first with the discussion on the inflation.
Yes.
Just generally speaking, inflation is the average change in prices. It depends how it is measured, but the universal consensus is to measure it based on the yearly change. So what happens is every month, the statisticians, they collect information on the prices of all the goods in the market. This is what is called the consumer price index. There are prices that consumers consume on a regular basis. So all the time there is data being recorded on what are the prices of these basic things. So if you look at milk, for example, or eggs, or bread, or flour, all of these are products that citizens consume on every month. Things like rent, things like fuel, clothing. So you think about all the different prices that
mm,
that on average that regular people consume, and you collect information. Uh,
mm,
Sometime is collected every day or every week or every month.
mm,
Now, in the context of South Sudan, we know that the Bureau of Statistics, the National Bureau of Statistics,
yes.
they collect this information every month. And at the end of every month, they provide us the estimate of how the inflation is in the country, what is going on with the overall price index,
Mm,
and is compared with a benchmark. Now, the benchmark that is normally used is 1 year from the date that information was collected. So right now, for example, we are in the month of August 2022.
yes.
So we will compare the price level as it is now to the price level in August 2021.
Mm,
And then we look at how much the prices have changed, what has been the change, and then it's calculated based on percentages. So then you look at the change and you
mm,
calculate your normal percentages. Sometimes prices level will go down, sometimes the price level will go up. When the price level go up, we'll say that the inflation has increased. When the price level go down, that is called deflation because it
mm,
means that the prices are actually going down, they're becoming cheaper. So that is generally what the inflation is. Now, as you can imagine,
mm,
if you say, for example, last year, let's say last year,
mm,
the price of a bottle of water was 500 South Sudanese pound. Just take that for example. Let's say that was what it was in August 2021. And then now when you compare to August 2022, let's say the price have gone up and it is 550, right? So you will now compare what it was back then and what it is now. And the difference is 50
mm,
pounds. So that means the price level have increased by 50 pounds. Now you
yes.
calculate that by percentages, compare it to the previous year, and you will find that the price level have increased by 10%, right? Now 10% on average is a lot. Like most
Yes.
of the time, even here in the US, the price level has been increasing 7%, 8% compared to last year. And people are already complaining. But if you say 10%, that is a lot. But now, if you compare to the context of where we are in South Sudan, these changes are actually enormous. Sometimes you're seeing a change of like 50% or 70%, depending on a specific product. So if you say, for example, your disposable income,
Mm,
because you have a nominal income, the money that you receive every month. But then there is a disposable income. Now, disposable income is the money that is left to you after the taxes have been taken away. So let's say you receive your salary, for example, in South Sudan now.
mm,
If you're a private soldier in the army or the police, you are making about 1,500 South Sudanese pounds.
mm,
1,500 South Sudanese pounds is your disposable income. So if, for example, prices of products, like I know, for example, now in Juba today, a kilo, 1 kilo of sugar is around 1,000 South Sudanese pounds. So if you are a private soldier, then with that amount, you can only buy a kilo and a half. For that, that is for your entire salary. You can only afford a kilo
mm,
and a half of sugar. That means that your income can buy you less now than it could give you last year. So it means for the army, for example, or the civil servants, the
mm,
prices are going up so high that they cannot afford to buy so many things in the market. That means their purchasing power, the
mm,
ability that their money can buy, the ability that money can buy for them, their salary, has reduced substantially, which means that the
mm.
overall quality of life and what they can afford has drastically reduced.
Perfect. Perfect, Dr. Peter Biar. And I want you also to help our people. What is the impact on private sector that we have in the country at the moment?
So yeah, so private sector, you see, most of the time we talk about trade, and of
Mm,
course we measure the trade generally by
mm,
how countries are trading with one another. But we just call it countries, but in reality, what is happening is private sector that
mm,
is trading with itself. You have companies that are buying inputs from other companies that they then use those inputs to produce their own goods. Take, for example, if you are a carpenter. If you're a carpenter, you need to
mm,
buy wood, and you need to buy wood from those who are selling wood.
mm,
And then you need to buy nails. And then now you use all of these things to then make a product like a table or like a bread. So when you buy something and the price of that input has gone up than it was before,
mm,
uh, then that creates certain problems for you. First of all, you cannot afford the same quantity that you
mm,
used to buy in the past because the prices have gone up. Either now you have to add in more money to be able to buy the same level of input that you used to buy in the past,
mm,
or you have to reduce your production. So automatically, one thing that you see with inflation when the prices are going up, private sector cannot, production will go down because what they can afford to buy at the same level that they used to buy in the past is
mm,
less now than it was before. Right. So that means what they can afford goes down. That is number one. Second is because what they're using to build the final product has already increased, it means that the price at which they are going to sell will also go up, right? Because you will not sell something that will be making you a loss. At the very least, you want some
mm,
marginal profit that will come to you. Otherwise, there's no point of engaging in economic activity that is giving you loss. So that means prices, inflation is also going to encourage inflation. So if you take, for example, now one of the things that is happening in the world
mm,
is that the energy prices have gone up. You know that a few years ago the oil prices was really low. It dropped significantly. At some point, it went below $40 per gallon. I mean, per barrel of oil. And since the start of the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia,
mhm,
prices of oil have gone up again, primarily because um, the conflict and the sanctions that were imposed on Russia
mm,
have uh, led to a broader reduction of the supply of energy. That means, of course, prices have to go up so that a new level of equilibrium can be created.
mhm,
So, with that new level of equilibrium now, it means that energy as a product has become more expensive. Now, what is so vital with energy is that it's an input that is needed regardless of whatever sector you are in. Whether you are a truck driver, you need fuel so that you can move your product. Uh,
correct.
and if the fuel is going up,
Mm,
that means what you are going to charge for transportation will go up. So the transportation will go up. So now, depending on a particular product and how important that product is in the supply chain, what is going to happen is that uh, what will happen as a result of that, it means that other prices also may also have to go up.
mm,
So because of the energy prices, we have seen now a broader increase in a lot of different goods. The second example is if you take, for example, and you look at food, one of the major challenges this year is that the overall supply of food, primarily grain, have substantially reduced. And it's also because of the same challenge like with energy, is because of the war in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is a breadbasket for a lot of grain, things like barley, rice. They are grown in Ukraine, and they are sent to many parts of the world.
mm,
Now, food is such a vital ingredient that is used pretty much on almost anything. If you look at food products, whether they are processed or if you go to restaurants,
mm,
uh, when the prices are going up, it means that what you pay in the restaurant or what you go to pay when you shop for your family
mm,
is going to increase, right? So when we talk about like the causes of inflation, there are causes that are internal
mm.
to a specific economy, and
Okay.
causes that are external. Like what I just explained now about the dynamic in Ukraine and
Mm.
between Ukraine and Russia, this is an external issue. If you, for example, you're looking at it from South Sudan or from United States or any
Yes.
of these Western countries,
Mm,
inflation is happening not because of economic activities or shocks within the economy,
mm,
but because of what is happening outside of the economy. So, in the case of what I just explained now, because of this war in Ukraine,
mm,
global food prices have gone up. There is nothing anyone can do in the world. You're just reacting to it, right? Uh, so that is one. Now, there are causes that are internal to the
mm,
economy, right? Um, these largely have to do with the management of the economy in question. So if you take in the context of South Sudan, how South Sudan economy has been managed can either ensure a macroeconomic stability or
mm,
creates macroeconomic instability. Now, in the context of South Sudan specifically, it's a very small economy
mm,
that is very dependent on the rest of the world, especially for the vital products that consumers consume on a regular basis.
mm,
We have been talking about this now for almost 20 years, how South Sudan rely on exports to feed its people. If you look at food, for example, we from like 2005, 2006,
mm.
we have been producing about 60% of our food, and we haven't really made significant progress. Now, some progress did happen, but the war in 2016, primarily in Equatorial region,
Yes.
uh, has uh, has really taken the country backward because Equatoria has primarily been the breadbasket of South Sudan. That's where a lot of growing of the food take place. And when the war began spilling out to central Equatoria and then to western Equatoria after the collapse of the initial peace agreement in 2016,
Mm,
a lot of displacement of people. Population was displaced. It went largely to Uganda. There are some that are in Kenya. There are some that are in Ethiopia. All of these countries. Um, so what has happened as a result of that, food has to continue coming from outside. And as I just mentioned to you, because of the
mm,
external context in Ukraine that we mentioned, products have gone up, and many countries in the region
mm,
are now trying to keep the food that they grow in their own countries so that the prices do not go up and their people do not starve and they do not have enough surplus that they can
mm,
sell to countries that are importing food like South Sudan. So in that context, for example, now you have a combination of both internal and external dynamics putting pressure on prices. But then when it comes to what the government actually do, so if you see in South Sudan, we have
mm,
institutions that are actually supposed to manage the economy. And primarily here, there are two institutions that are very critical in the management of South Sudan economy.
mm.
One is the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, primarily on the good side of the economy, because every economy, you have the good side and then you have the monetary side. So on the
Mm,
good side is the Ministry of Finance, because the Ministry of Finance is in charge of the government budget. So because it is in charge of the government budget, it has influence on things like taxation. So although the National Revenue Authority collects the tax, the Ministry of Finance pretty much determine what are going to be the tax level in consultation with the national parliament.
yes.
So when the taxes are increased, for example, that has an effect on the aggregate demand of the economy. The second is the investment that the Ministry of Finance make. Now, in our context here, you may wonder, what do you mean by investment? But it's because of the way our economy is being managed is not the
Mm,
way that economy is naturally managed in a functioning country. In a functional country, what the Ministry of Finance or the Treasury try to do is to increase the performance of the economy, to ensure
yes.
that the private sector is doing well, that the households are doing well, that they are able to engage in a positive way in the economy. So the government makes certain investment. So one of the main things that depress economic performance in many countries is insecurity. So then the government would think about what need to be done to make sure the insecurity is managed. Things like transportation system, making sure that goods are able to move quickly from one part of the country to another part of the country. These are investment that the government make. These are public goods that the government provide. But then the government also invests directly in the market. So it can support farmers, for example. It can support like traders. It can support manufacturers, for example, those who are trying to increase the overall productivity of the economy. Now, our Ministry of Finance has never been doing that. And this is not because there are bad people in the Ministry of Finance that want to
Mm,
see the South Sudan economy fail, but primarily all the resources in the country are controlled by the political elites. And the political elites do not have interest to invest in the economy. So what you see happening in the Ministry of Finance is that the money that is generated either through the sale of the oil or the sale of other resources like gold, or from the collection of taxes, that money ends up being stolen by political leaders and is put in the individual pockets. It doesn't really go into the economy anymore. It flees the country through the corruption. Uh, so Ministry of Finance then does not have the resources to invest in building roads, in providing power and providing electricity supply, uh, investing in education and creating skills in the economy, investing in the healthcare so that you have a healthy workforce. They don't have resources for that, primarily because the political elites, they take the money and they divide it among themselves and keep it in their pockets. So you don't see much that is happening on that side. Now, the other side is the central bank. And the central bank here has a very, very important role in any functioning economy. And that is the stability of the macro variables. And the variables I have in mind here are three major variables. The first, of course, is the inflation, and is primarily the most important variable, because ideally you want the price level to be stable. You don't want inflation to be going up. You want a very low inflation, maybe 1%, 2%, 3%. Once it begins reaching 5% is a problem, because you want the money to have value. The same value that they had last year is the value that you want to ensure that is maintained this year. So you try to keep inflation low. So that is one variable. Second variable is the exchange rate. Exchange rate is very important because it determines how you interact with the rest of the world. And you want, ideally here, the same way that you want your inflation variable to be low, you also want your exchange rate to be stable. You don't want it to change a lot, whether your currency to gain strength so fast or lose value so fast. You want it to be stable at the same rate as much as possible. The third value, or the third variable, is the interest rates, right? And the interest rates here are very, very, very important because they govern how the financial institution in the country, primarily private banks, how they interact with the private sector. Because ideally, the way the economy normally work is you have private actors like firms, restaurants, vendors. They come to the bank, they borrow, and then they pay back on a regular basis. So you want the interest rates to be low so that anybody that want to borrow will have access to borrowing. Because when you borrow at a low interest rate, it means that the amount that you'll be paying on a monthly basis to service your loan is also going to be low, right? It's going to be as low as possible. But when the interest rates are very high, it makes it very difficult for people to borrow, because then borrowing is very expensive. So if you borrow, you have to pay back a lot more in interest rates in the future. Now, in the context of South Sudan, because South Sudan economy is so weird because of such a high level of corruption, it doesn't function the same way that other economies function. So if you take, for example, the central bank does not have ability to target inflation. The reason why it doesn't have ability to target inflation is because of the weird way in which the economy is not managed well. It doesn't have the tools that it needs to quickly inject in money or quickly suck the money out of the economy, right? Now, the reason for that is because value in our currency and the confidence in our currency has been so low. And it started after the war started in South Sudan. Once the war started in 2013, a lot of money that was in the central bank had to be used for the purposes of the war, buying new weapons, recruiting army, feeding them, all of that. So all the billions of dollars that were in the central bank at that time, a lot of it had to be taken by the military, right, and used for the purpose of the war. The second issue was the distortion in the market. The major distortion we had back then was actually a corruption scheme. This is the so-called letter of credit, or the LCs. The reason why it was set up back then, it was supposed to facilitate the purchases of goods abroad, so that the private sector have an easy way of importing products. Now, it was a wrong policy, even that was the intention, because ideally what you want to do as a central bank,
Mm.
want to discourage too much of your money going abroad. You want more of money from abroad to come
Come
in
in. Mm.
into your economy. And you want the money that you already have within the economy to circulate
Mm.
within the economy. That's how, in the end, you encourage economic growth. So instead of making import cheaper so that people can buy goods that are made in China or goods are made in Kenya or in Japan in form of V8s and Toyotas and all of that, they should have focused on the goods that are in South Sudan and promoting them to be sold abroad so that the more money gets to flow in South Sudan. So it was wrong to begin with. But even despite the intention, the way it was executed showed that this was really a corruption scheme. Because now people came with fake companies. They say they are buying things in Brazil, they are buying wherever. They do the paperwork. Turn out that most of this paperwork was actually fake, and they were not buying anything. All they wanted was dollars. Now, once they got the dollars, they just go 2 blocks from the central bank and sell those things in the black market, because they were now getting the letters of credit
Mm.
through the official exchange rate, right? And it was one of the reasons why people like me, if you remember back then, we were advocating strongly to make sure that instead of having a fixed exchange rate regime, as South Sudan had back then, that we allow for exchange rate to adjust to the market fundamentals. We wanted an exchange rate that can float. And one of the people that actually understood this very well was Dear Tong, right, who later on became the governor of the central bank.
Mm.
Here at the time was a director general, and he was I think he was a DG for the currency.
Mm.
And he understood this. Very few people in the central bank did. But the problem is the political elites never understood. And in South Sudan, we do not have an independent central bank. Now, this is one of the principles. It's just the same way. One of the principles is you should have independent parliament and you should have an independent judiciary,
Yes.
so that you don't have an executive that is controlling everything. Well, in South Sudan, we don't have any independent institution. All the institutions are politically controlled by the political leadership of the country. And this is the same thing with the central bank. Central bank doesn't have any independence to be able to actually set the monetary policy the way they see it, based on the professional ethics and understanding as economists.
Mm.
They are all controlled by the presidency through the Ministry of Finance. So as a result, the currency was managed in such a way that it encouraged economic actors to pursue their own private interests, which in this case, to get much money as possible, then you convert it in the black market and make money without producing any value in the economy. So what this created is all these reserves just flew out of the economy. And then the third thing that the central bank did, which was the biggest problem, was now they began to monetize the deficit. By monetization of the deficit, what I meant is printing money, right? So every month they were printing around 600 million South Sudanese pounds, just printing and then injecting it to the market. Wow. It went up to $800 million per month. It even went to $1 billion South Sudanese pounds per month, right? And that's one of the reasons how our currency lost value very quickly, right? From $1 being £2 to now $1 being 65,000 South Sudanese pounds, right? Like it's losing more than 99% of the value. So that is what happened. So we have a central bank here that is unable to concentrate on the variables that matter. They cannot target inflation because they don't have the instrument. One of the instruments that the central bank use in the normal economies is bonds, right? These are bonds, for example, here in the US, they are called the Treasury bills. These bills, the Federal Reserve in the United States sell this to banks, right? To financial institutions, bank, big insurance, so all these big financial institutions. And you buy it, and it has certain interests, right? This is how the Federal Reserve raise interest or decrease it. And if you buy this, you hold on to it, You get for the number of month or years. There are some that mature after 30 years. There are some that mature after 15 years, and all of this thing. And they all carry different interest rates. So the central bank uses this to then engage in the economy and ensure that economy is stable or is able to realize its specific goals. We don't have that in South Sudan because the central bank in South Sudan does not have credibility. As we speak, central bank in South Sudan has no money. You may wonder, how does the central bank have no money? Well, what they have done is most of the money has already been spent. And not only spent, they have gone now into what is called overdraft, right?
Yes.
In the central bank, you already have money. So they have assets. They have assets in South Sudanese pounds because the South Sudanese pounds is actually owned by the Bank of South Sudan. They own it, is the assets, right? But for them, they see it as a liability because every South Sudanese pound that is floating in the economy, they need to be able to convert it. Now, the way they convert it is through the foreign exchange. So they also look at the holding of foreign exchange. Now, back in the days, the good old days, the Bank of South Sudan used to hold currencies, dollars, British pounds, euros, and Japanese yen, and Chinese yuan. These were the main currencies that it held. Today, most of these currencies have been exhausted. So if you go into a typical day to a central bank, there is money, right? But then the money comes every month when the oil is sold. And when this money comes in, is supposed to then go now into the account.
Yes.
What they have created in South Sudan, because the economy is being run like a mafia, they have created something called overdraft. So whenever the money goes, it goes, already the central bank is into negative. So
Yes.
right now, if you have claims from the Ministry of Finance or from the presidency or from the army, then you are sent to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance, if it hears your claim, it sends you to the central bank. You come to the central bank, they will tell you whether they have money or not. Since they have no money, but if you are very powerful, so let's say you're a relative of the president, or you're a good friend with the head of the national security, like a Kolkur or any of these other powerful guys, then what you do is you come to the governor of the central bank and you tell him, well, I need money. And he will tell you there is no money. Yeah. Then he said, yes, approve my thing and I will wait for the money. So then he will approve and then he will give you a check, right? If you go to the central bank the same day, you will not get any money.
Yes.
What will happen is if the money comes in, the minute the money comes in, you can go and collect your money. So right now in Juba, you have people walking around with checks. They're carrying checks, but if they go to the central bank, they will not get any money. And then there are people who come today and the checks are approved. If the money come tomorrow, they will be the first that will be called. They will come and get their money, right? So it's being managed through overdraft. There is no money that ever get to the central bank because most of the money is already divided from the time the oil is sold. For example, the money for some of these companies, like the powerful one, they get their own cut directly from the sale of the oil companies.
Even before money get deposited.
Before the money even get anywhere. And then there is a money for example, that comes in form of cash that then is divided between the key warlords in the country and the president. And then whatever little that now goes to the central bank, this is where now whoever that has a claim in the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Defense or wherever, you now come and you wait for this overdraft money. So this is the way the economy is working. And because of that, the central bank is no longer focused on inflation, on exchange rate management, or on interest rates. None of these variables matter. If you come now, Kenyan Commercial Bank is giving its own interest rates. The same thing with Equity, Ivory Bank, any of these banks, they're giving their own interest rate. And they have very high double digits, which is unheard of anywhere in the world. And it's because the central bank is unable to focus on the key variables that actually matter when it comes to economic management.
Wow. Dr. Peter Biar is so phenomenal, explaining all these things. Now, in terms of South Sudan, you already explained, external factors and internal factors for this inflation. Now, in terms of our country, with this crisis that we have, how this actually economy can be fixed, how this inflation can be fixed, what method can be used, to get it fixed.
All right, there are two answers. All right,
Mhm.
first let's discuss the technical
Mm,
solution to the economy, right? Because we argue in economics that economic is a science, right?
mm,
There are certain things in economics that if you don't do them, no matter how hard you pray,
mm,
you will never have a functioning economy.
mm,
You have to do the right things. Otherwise, the economy is going to be in a serious crisis like we have now in South Sudan, right? And those technical things are just as what I explained. You need, first of all, to have an independent central bank.
mm,
Central bank that cannot be ordered by the president or by the Ministry of Finance to do ABCD. All right, that is very, very, very important. You need to have a central bank that can independently do its own job.
mm,
And in the region, we do have those central banks. So if you take the Central Bank of Kenya,
mm,
Central Bank of Kenya is independent. President Uhuru Kenya cannot tell the central bank to raise interest rates or to make sure that Kenya shilling gain value or any of these things. They do their job based on their mandate as
mm,
defined by the law. The same thing in Uganda, by the way. The Central Bank of Uganda is independent, you know. And this is important because if you want macroeconomic stability, you need to have a independent central bank. If the central bank is not independent, it's going to be politicized. And once it is politicized, it will
mm,
not focus on its mandate, right? So this is if technically is one important thing. You need to trust the central bank. You need to put your best economists in it and define their mandate based on the law. And if you need oversight, let the oversight be done by the parliament, but not by the executive, so that they raise political independence, right? This is very, 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 very critical. Once you have that,
mm,
then they can focus now on the key variables that they need to focus on. Inflation, make sure you have a stable inflation. Exchange rate, make sure that the exchange rate is flexible and is also stable. And the interest rate, make sure that the interest rate and all of these things are low and they are stable. The second thing is your relations with the Ministry of Finance. And this is important when it comes to management of the revenues of the government. Ministry of Finance need to have a plan. Now, when South Sudan got independence,
mm,
many of us were seeing ahead some of these challenges that we are in today.
mm,
And that is the reason why we push for what was known then as South Sudan Development Plan. You need a plan. You don't want the money to come and then people to wonder what should be done with the money. You
correct.
need the money to already have a plan.
Mhm,
And the plan was to ensure that we grow our economy as fast as possible. We create employment for youth as fast as possible through private sector. There was a plan that was very detailed, but the problem was the plan was never implemented, right? Uh, and this is the problem of South Sudan. We write all these beautiful work, but then none of it was ever implemented, right? The investment that was supposed to be made in electricity, like Fuller Dam, up to
mm,
now, they still have no money, right? Building of roads, key roads, like one of the roads that was seen as a priority was the road in Upper Nile, right? And also the road to Equatoria and the road to Bargazal. These three big roads were seen as ways of opening up the economy, because then you can build a smaller feeder roads to the bigger roads.
mhm,
Because a lot of economic activity is actually taking place in the villages. This is where people are farming. And when they farm, like I remember when I was at the World Bank, one of the most powerful visits that we had was a trip that we had to Yambio
mm,
back in 2009. When we went to Yambio, we were shocked by how much food that was grown there, but the food was rotting, because it could not be transported to Juba.
market,
So it
yes.
was just dependent on the food coming in from Uganda, when our own food that is grown in other parts of the country was not reaching the market, right? So we needed to build those roads so that those who are growing food in different parts in Anzara, in Yambio, in Tumbra, all of this part of Western Equatoria, could bring this food into Juba, into Wau, into Malakal, and all of this place. And it was the same problem that we went and found also in Malakal. You had fish that was rotting, and it could not be transported to Wau, it could not be transported to Juba. So, and it's because of the infrastructure. So through the South Sudan Development Plan, there were key roads that were supposed to be prioritized, but they were never done, right? And this is when I reached personally a conclusion that the problem that was holding South Sudan back is not because we don't have technical understanding of how to manage our economy in our country. It's because we have a wrong political leadership that is in charge of the country. You have a president without a vision, right? And even now in South Sudan, no matter what the technically right thing is, it's never going to be implemented. That's why some of us ended up finding ourselves as activists. Otherwise, we would have never become activists or even aspire to become politicians. We would have been very much okay as technocrats, offering our technical solution to fix South Sudan and to ensure that our people were getting a kind of life that is respectable and that added value into their own lives, that they were in pursuit of economic opportunity. So we don't have that. So right now, we have to speak very honestly about what needs to be done to fix the economy of South Sudan. You need a better management of the country. You need leaders with a vision. You need leaders with understanding that power is not just about you being in power. It's about you delivering for your people. And there is no any other way that matters. It's not just about security or saying peace. But how does that peace actually translate into the life of the normal person? The way it's translated is when that person has a job and is able to make an income that can allow him or her to support her family, right?
Correct.
And make the kind of investment that will generate long-term financial viability of that family, right? That we don't have in South Sudan. And it's because the money is being stolen. Corruption in South Sudan is at a level that has never been seen anywhere in the world, right? The way in which the money are being stolen, the way in which the central bank is literally being looted in broad daylight, nothing like that has ever been seen before. So if we don't change that, our prayers alone, if we pray, go to home at night and pray to God, that alone will not do anything. Because the problem is not God. God has given us a country, rich resources, like oil, like gold. But as Agaga Chul told us, the gold has been sold, the oil has been sold 5 years in advance, and the money is already used. Gold is being looted on a broad daylight every day by those around the president regularly, right? This is happening, and Agag told us that the gold is being sold and the money is being siphoned off, right? So without our resources going into investment to invest in our economy, our wealth is just flowing out of the country. And our leaders are using the wealth from our country in South Sudan to make investments in foreign countries. Right? At least Kenyans, when they steal from the government, they invest in their own country. But our leaders, when they steal from us, they go and invest in Kenya, in Uganda, Dubai. And now some of them are in Dubai, Malaysia, all of these places. This is where they are investing. So you need a proper management of the country. All these issues we see, whether issues of insecurity, whether issues of economy, they are all connected to the quality of leadership. So if we continue to say, well, Kir is fine, maybe the governor of the central bank, there is no governor that you can put to the central bank to fix this problem. There is no minister of finance that you can bring to fix a problem of a failed political leadership. Even Dier Tong now, he has been recycled twice as governor of the central bank, and he has not fixed anything. And now they have taken him to the Ministry of Finance. Agag has been fired, and my good friend Dier Tong has been put there.
Agag
He's
is fired because of saying what is happening actually.
exactly. But the thing is, Dier is a great economist. Like, I have enormous respect for his economic ability. Is someone that I sincerely respect. Highly trained. He has worked in Ireland. He has worked in Sudan. He's a great economist. But he's not going to fix the failures of Salva Kiir, because Salva Kiir is going to order him to pay X number of money to so and so. Salva Kiir is gonna order this governor of the central bank pay so and so this millions, pay and so this money, and if he doesn't do it, well, he's going to be fired. And then if he does it, then he cannot fix the problem. Right. So the problem we have in South Sudan is problem of failed leadership. We have leadership that has no idea what it wants to do to the people of South Sudan, and with capacities that are so limited that it doesn't understand how everything else connects to one another. So if we are genuine and we say we want to fix the problem, we need to put in political leaders that have a vision of the economy, right? And the funny thing is, if you actually go back and read the documents of the SPLM, this vision was there. One of the most critical documents that we keep on referring to is what was then called the SPLM Strategic Framework for Transition from War to Peace of 2004. And it has a vision of the economy. And even John Grant has mentioned it so many times in his speech. And even Kiir, he has mentioned in his speech, it's just that he read his speech and he just read the word that is there, and he doesn't internalize. Like, what he reads there is not what is in his heart, right? And the vision was that you use the oil to inject in resources to grow agriculture. It was so basic, but it was so powerful because majority of our people were in the villages. Yeah? So all we needed to do is use the oil to build agriculture. Now, what we needed was not just to buy tractors, and the president bought his so-called 1,000 tractors. That was not what was needed. What was needed was actually to make sure that the underlying impediments to economic growth, things like insecurity, things like roads, things like access to power, things like access to skills, that these issues, you use the oil revenues or oil money to make those investments, so that then agriculture doesn't have the same constraints, so that the agriculture can grow very fast. This was what was supposed to be done. But unfortunately, our president put that aside. He never followed the vision that was laid out in that critical SPLM document. And he never invested in the SPLM to build the party and the institution itself. And it's that kind of mentality that is still holding us hostage. So we need to have that vision of the economy. We need to ensure that these oil revenue are used. And we don't have much time. This is the other thing that the Junubin don't understand. Oil is running out. Right? Oil is running out. Oil, as we know, especially the oil in Upper Nile, is running out. Some wells are already closing. They are not able to produce. And by the way, we are only getting 30% of our oil. Right? This is what people don't understand. 70% of our oil is going to waste. And why is that? The reason is simple. The infrastructure we have in South Sudan was built back in the late 1990s by Omar al-Bashir. Bashir was under a serious pressure. This was the time when the SPLM was recovering and it was taking ground very fast, and they needed cash. And they signed a deal with Chinese. Chinese worked really fast, and just within a very short time, they were able to begin. But the Chinese technology is very poor, right? It's only giving us access to 30% of our oil. But if we replace the Chinese technology tomorrow with the Western technology, like take, for example, the Norwegian technology or the Dutch technology or the American technology, we can raise the recovery rate to 90%, as high as 90%. So instead of getting, like right now, we are getting around 160,000 barrels per day, right? We would just have to multiply that by 3, right? Multiply that by 3, and what do you get? It is truly a lot, almost 500,000 barrels per day.
Or even you can get 1 million barrels for a day.
Exactly.
Doesn't have anything.
And if you bring it back to where it was before the war started in 2013, which was
Mm,
around
6.
350,000 barrels per day, and with the better American technologies, that's over a million. And if you do that, you triple the amount of money that you get right now, right?
Yes.
So you can say like one third can continue funding the budget the way it is.
Mhm.
The other two thirds
Can be used.
use this now for critical investments, right? Like roads. And then the other third, you put it in the future generation fund because oil is not just only for our generation alone or for those of us who are alive. This is a wealth that God gives to the people of South Sudan,
Mhm.
both current and the future generation. So we need to also have money go into a future generation account. We are not putting anything in now. So, and we are continuing the way we are continuing now.
Mm.
It will not be a surprise if the oil run out in the next 10 to 15 years, right? And when that happens, we'll just be a poor country like any other poor country in the world without any ability to make critical investment that can allow us to leapfrog and move up to higher levels of development.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Biar. With that, I understand. With Karen, Kir authoritarian system, nothing will be fixed. Then we need, the new, administrative in the country, change of leadership. That's what going to fix this actually to bring about, development and economy in South Sudan. I want you to give a last word to the people of South Sudan, but I want you to talk a little bit about the refineries. South Sudan is producing oil country, but yet we have to bring oil to supply our need from outside. What's wrong of building refineries so we can actually uh, export oil to Ethiopia, to Kenya? These people are million, and they need actually. Last word and include that, please, before we go.
That is a wonderful question, my brother.
Mm,
And just to tell you a story, what happened in Wow
mm,
yesterday and day before, since the beginning of this month, the Wow Teaching Hospital
mm,
uh, doesn't have fuel. The generators have been off. Somebody went there the day before yesterday,
mm,
and he needed to have a melia. He needed to have a surgery.
mm.
And to do the surgery, they needed the power to be on. So the doctor
Correct.
told him,
Mm,
sorry, we cannot do the surgery because we do not have fuel. But this guy was actually somebody who is a bit rich. So he went to the market and went and bought his own fuel, and he brought it into the hospital. He filled up the generator of the hospital. And as a result, they were able to do surgery on him. And now that has become the temporary policy of the Wow Teaching Hospital. If you want the doctors to see you, you buy your own fuel, and then the doctors have no problem seeing you. Now, what if you cannot afford to have to buy your own fuel? If you're a soldier or you're a civil servant or somebody who does not even have a job, then you have no chance at all of doctors seeing you. For the situation to reach that level in a country that produces oil, that is shocking. And it's primarily of what you just said, because we don't have refineries. And imagine, it's more than 11 years since we became independent.
mhm.
Why are we still importing? And it's because Key regime has not prioritized refinery. My brother, sometime when you look, it's as if the current regime is deliberately sabotaging South Sudan. Is deliberately sabotaging the people of South Sudan and holding them back from moving forward. Because imagine, refinery doesn't just give you a refined petroleum products, right?
Mm, mm,
You need, of course, the petrol, uh,
mhm.
diesel, all of these things, they come from a refinery.
Gas, natural gas.
Natural, yeah, but even more than that,
Mm,
things like tires, right?
mhm.
Tires are made through petroleum products. You have refineries now that produce as high as 10 different products. Even medicine, petrochemical industry is a
Yeah.
large industry in Middle East and even here in America, right? And there are people willing to make those investments. But the problem is our government is not a priority for them, right? Now, they signed this deal last time to build a refinery, but then they decide that the refinery, instead of building it in the oil fields, they will go and build it in Warab. Hmm? Instead of building it in Unity or in Upper Nile,
Mm,
want to go and build it in Warab. Huh? This was a political reason. But now to take the fuel from where it is in the oil field to where up requires building a small pipeline so that
Mhm.
you can take the fuel there. That requires
Correct.
investment, you know. So all of these things, not much has happened. There is a small refinery that I think is being built. It's supposed to cost about $4.5 billion. But I don't know. I don't think that this refinery has made any progress. Um, the main problem is you have the political leadership without a vision of the economy, and because of that, uh, basic things like the refineries are still out of the question. So I think my last word to the people of South Sudan is to basically tell them, I understand the economic hardship that you face. I know right now, like the bottle of water doesn't cost 500 pounds, as I was giving as an example, but it's quite expensive. It's high there. I know a kilo of meat is now out of reach of majority of the household of South Sudan. I know you can afford to buy sugar. You can afford to buy medicines for your families. So I understand the hardship you are in, but there is no a magic wand that we can wave. We wave like this, and then the economy is fixed. There's no such a thing. For us to do that, it requires us fixing the political problem that the country is in, ensuring that we have a political leadership in the country that care about the daily life of the citizen of South Sudan. But if we continue with tribal loyalties, clan loyalties, and we say Kir is my uncle or Kir is my cousin, is my elder from my community, none of us is attacking Kir because he's an elder or he's from a particular community.
Mm.
Our problem with him is that he's failing in his responsibility as the leader of the country. We don't mind about him being an elder in the community. And in fact, we are asking him as an elder to take his time and rest and allow the country to move forward. So, this is what we need to do. We need to ensure that we unite our voices and we bring about a different political leadership with a different vision for the country. That way, South Sudan can move forward. But if we continue to say he's my relative and he's my uncle, and we don't want to fix the country, we will not be able to fix the economy, and therefore, the future of the younger generation of South Sudan will be wasted.
Dr. Peter Birajak, thank you. And thank you for coming and elaborating. And this very, very educational to our people. Now, many people understand exactly what is happening and what needed to take place in order to get to the point that we are been fighting for 22 years. Thank you so much. And I know that you have other commitments that you have to go to. I'm not going to hold you. And thank you so much. And we will continue with this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, my dear brothers and sisters, I would like to thank you for watching Concerned Citizen of South Sudan. As I said from the beginning, please go ahead and share this live episode and go ahead and subscribe our channel on the YouTube as well, John Cormayol. And yes, we discuss impact of the chronic inflation in on South Sudanese citizen and how it can be fixed. And you see that it's not an easy. Dr. Peter Berajak is an economist as well, and he knows how these issues can be tackled in our country. So with that, it requires us to put our rank together, uniting voices, as he put it, to address and tackle this regime that is failing the people of South Sudan. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you always for being part of Concerned Citizen of South Sudan. We shall meet again next week. Have a good night for now.